one of the main reasons why our society is the way it is has to do with patents and copyrights and trademarks, is the intellectual property system that we have here. We sort of create these protections.
Welcome back
to another week of Sometimes Crypto.
The Unscripted Crypto Podcast.
I wasn't ready. I was opening my water.
Where have you been this whole time?
Today we got a special guest, Premlee.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Hi, Internet. It's nice to see you again.
I don't know how you wanted to introduce yourself. I just went straight with the...
Well, I usually go by Premlee Barbosa, and my friends will call me Prem or Premlee or Lee. It depends.
It's a man of many names.
Yeah, but they're all the same name.
True. Fair.
Man of many ways to say the same name.
Very true. So, we invited you on because you've been a very prominent person in the crypto space. And
in the crypto space. Well, yeah. I'm happy to hear that you invited me on here, because otherwise I would feel very unwelcome.
Being here and not invited, right?
Yeah, right. Like, how did I get here? I've been hosting an event called Bitcoin Brunch, and we've probably done 110 Bitcoin brunches.
Every week?
Every week. We do it every week. Jesus. So it's been like 2 years, more than 2 years now. Fun times. Like, there was a lot of, as you said, there's a lot of crypto space in South Florida. And so I wanted to do my part to make some Bitcoin space in South Florida.
Absolutely. Have your little corner of crypto.
Our little bubble, I suppose.
Your little event. And it's been going on strong, consistent.
Yeah, I mean, the last 2 weeks we haven't got too many people out, but I'm not really in it for the quantity of people. It's more about the quality. So I like to have a small meetup. If I can get 6 to 12 people, that's like perfect for me, because we all sit around this round table and you can kind of get a really nice conversation going. And between 6 and 12 people, you
feels
have
intimate.
Oh yeah, like sometimes we get more people than that, and then it loses the intimacy.
Yeah, 100%.
So when it's like 12 is already pushing it. Like 9 people is like perfect, man. You just get 9 people around that table, and then maybe you'll have like a few people talking. Some people like have some sort of expertise, or they're a developer or something, so they know things a little bit deeper than some of the other people. And it's just a nice organic discussion that goes on. And I set no agenda other than like I'll read like a column that I write sometimes. That's usually pretty short, so I'll read that at 2 p.m. The event happens from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. in Miami at Naomi's Garden.
Shameless plug.
Right? It's called Bitcoin Brunch.
It will be in the links.
Yeah.
In the description below.
And so, we get some awesome topics, like usually whatever's really interesting that week, like whatever's big on Bitcoin Twitter, people will come in and be like, Sam Bankman-Fried's in the news again. And I'm like, okay, whatever, let's talk about it. If that's what's interesting to you. I really try not to set like an agenda or topic, although because it is like, in the crypto space, so to speak, like we do get like crypto people, which is fine. Like Bitcoin Brunch is open to anyone. We're very inviting. But like I'm very anti-shilling, so like don't come to Bitcoin Brunch to try to sell your token to us, because that's going to annoy me.
Yeah, that's fair though.
You got to moderate your own events, man, because if not, it becomes like a Reddit space where people.
Yeah, but otherwise, like I'm always happy to hear what people are working on, right? So I mean, if someone's working in the crypto space, their Web3, their DeFi, their whatever, like okay, I mean that's what you're working on. You can talk about it. Like I'm not like, no, hide this. It's Bitcoin Brunch. Like no, I'm not. I'm definitely not like that. But I am like a very strict Bitcoin Maxie though. Like I'm a Bitcoin only person.
He put his name on. He's like, I am Bitcoin only. Fair
Bitcoin
enough.
only. I mean, to me, the dollar is the biggest altcoin of them all, or not. It's not the biggest altcoin. It's the biggest. Am I allowed to use curse words on this? It's the biggest shit coin.
I mean, you
of them all. You're gonna bleep that out later, maybe, so that can be broadcast in India.
No, we don't.
You don't censor.
We don't censor.
Great. So yeah. So like it's not an
Speak
altcoin
freely.
because the altcoins historically were reactions to Bitcoin. So obviously the dollar is not a reaction to Bitcoin, but the dollar is absolutely a shit coin.
It is not sound money.
That too, sure.
Why are you calling it shitcoin? I'm not against you saying. I just want to know why you're saying that.
Yeah. Well, about the dollar?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, this is a very like sort of ideological stance that I have. It has to do with there's an ideal out there in economics that money should arise out of some sort of like usefulness. So in an economy, like in early stages of development, you might not have money yet. You may not have a currency. So you're trading and you're doing bartering, and maybe you even have debt and like, okay, I owe you cows and you owe me fish
Chickens
or whatever. Yeah. And so like a money arises as this kind of like intermediary so that we don't have to keep, like doing all this barter. We can just have this middle ground that we all know is valuable in general, and that we can then take this middle ground. And so historically, like you might imagine something like gold or silver or rice, sugar and salt. Like these are things that in different times and in different places have been kind of like staple goods that everyone knew had a value. Now you come to the modernity, and people have this like notion, the way that we use money. We know how to use money. We don't necessarily know what it is or how it works, where it comes from even, but we know how to use it. Like I know I go to the store and I buy something, I give them money, right? And then they give me the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like even when I was a kid, like getting candy bars from the local like little quick mart. So, but this dollar, like is it this historical intermediary? Is it like a thing that we would be using even if it wasn't money, right? Like that we would be using because it's useful to us. And like, no, the dollar is not useful to us besides being money. So
money as in something that we use.
A means of exchange.
As a means of exchange.
Yeah.
So aside from a medium of exchange or a store of value or like all these other, people have so many definitions of like money has to be this or money has to be that. And I'm not one of those kinds of people. I'm like, let's just try to find the middle ground. So, dollars as a form of like its only utility is money. It has no other utility. You wouldn't even want to wipe your butt with it because it's not particularly soft. Like we live in an amazing time, and you can get really soft toilet paper.
We should make softer money so so have multiple uses.
Might as well is what I'm saying. We might as well. So to get to the crux of the matter, dollars at least show that money has a utility in an economy. Like money is a very useful technology to have, but the dollar itself does not have like the commodity utility or any kind of like utility outside of being money. So when I had that realization, like it raises the question of, well, if the dollar is only money and it has no other utility, like I'm not going to wipe my butt with it. I'm not going to use it to like set a fire and warm myself at night. That's
against the law.
Defacing the dollar.
Defacing the dollar.
Yeah, but so since it's not going to do any of those other things, and it's only money, it seems a reasonable question: is it the best money possible? Is it the best money available? Is this the money that I should be using? Why am I using this money and not like the Venezuelan bolivar? And there's a lot of great answers to why I'm using the dollar instead of the Venezuelan bolivar
or others
or other currencies. But to me, there isn't a great answer as to why I'm using the dollar instead of Bitcoin. There's a lot of context and reasons as to why I'm using the dollar instead of Bitcoin. But like as someone who I look at Bitcoin as a technology that is a better money. Like if Bitcoin only does one thing, and it actually does a bunch of different things, but if it only did one thing and that one thing was money, it happens to be a better money than the dollar.
Okay, so how can we define good money?
Oh, it's so subjective, right? It's like an opinion that I have, and it's an opinion that you have, right? And maybe we'll agree on the opinion. For one thing, an asset that can be created at will has a lot of problems to people who rely on that asset who themselves cannot create it at will. So the ability for banks and the government to literally create dollars, but for you and I to literally not create dollars without like breaking counterfeiting laws, that's a big problem. Like this is a big ethical problem. Like who is it that's able to make these dollars, and what are they doing with the dollars that they're making? Because I have to work for my dollars just like hundreds of millions of people in this country and just like billions of people on this planet. Like they got to work for the money. Oh my God, can you imagine? But somebody out there doesn't have to work for their money. They literally print it.
So it should be fair to like acquire. Like
no,
there shouldn't be.
I don't believe in fair. Like life isn't fair, but it could be more fair.
So when I say fair to acquire, I mean like accessible to anyone.
Well, I mean, obviously, Bitcoin's not accessible to anyone. You need a computer. Mm-hmm. You know, you need a cell phone, a smartphone, you need a laptop, you need internet connection. So that's obviously a barrier to entry in and of itself. But given that barrier to entry, like, yeah, beyond that, I think it is accessible to everyone. Like, if you have a smartphone, and people all over the world in some of the poorest countries, they have smartphones, and you don't even need to have constant internet access. Like, anyone can download Wallet of Satoshi or Phoenix Wallet. Like, these are these Lightning wallets, and then they can be sending and receiving Bitcoin with people all over the world. So it's pretty cool. You can't do that with the dollar.
It should be. What do you mean you can't do that with the dollar?
I mean, so like I have Brazilian cousins, right? I'm half Brazilian. I have a lot of cousins in Brazil. I love them all, and I want to support them and help them, and I want to help them grow as people in their country and their communities. And like, it's really hard for me to send them money. Like, there's no way for me to just send them money. Now, in the country of Brazil, they have this like great app called Pix where anyone can send money to anyone in Brazil. Mm-hmm. But that's like a collusion between the banks of Brazil, right? And like, I'm not from Brazil. Like, I mean, I am from Brazil, but I'm not like Brazilian in that way. So I don't have a Brazilian bank account at the moment. So I can't just send them money easily. Like, it's really hard for me to send them money. I would have to pay somebody, some third party. I have to like give that third party my money. I'd have to trust them. And probably they're trustworthy if they're like a Western Union, but they're charging me a lot of money to send money to my family. Yeah. So like, no, I can't just send dollars to my family.
There's a higher cost to sending.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but for that particular example, the real downside would be transactions over distance. As in, like, because we could transact between us right now in cash money, no problem. We don't have to trust a third party. It doesn't have to go where there's not going to be any fees between us. But that's because we're right here. In terms of like longer distance, which is your case, like remittance and sending money to families overseas or in a different country, then there you do have to trust someone who, if you're not willing to go yourself and do the transaction.
Yeah, but with Bitcoin, I don't have to trust anyone.
Exactly. You don't have to trust a third party, just the network, which is then mostly secure.
Well, it's mostly secure. Like, if I run my own node, then I should rest assured that the network is secured. Yeah. If I don't run my own node, then obviously I have to trust the people whose node I'm relying on.
Yeah, all the other nodes.
To, like, well, really, no, you're just relying on, like most wallets are connected to just one node, right? So like, it's whoever produced that app, like, they're connecting you to a node, and it's not necessarily their node, but is a node. And so it's not even like the whole, it's complicated. Like, what is Bitcoin security? And this is a whole discussion. Like, is it the hash rate? Like, we have the highest hash rate ever now. And for people who don't know, that's like basically how many guesses miners are making at what the block, what is it, like the block number, the proof of work, right? It's called proof of work. And so they're guessing at what this proof of work is, and they're trying to guess really fast, because if you guess it before other people, like you win the block, and you get, right now it's like 6.25 Bitcoin. But the hash was like much lower. Like, if you go back in time, like, it's lower. And so should we say that like Bitcoin was unsecure when the hash rate was half of what it is today? Like, should we say that Bitcoin was unsecure when the hash rate was a quarter of what it is today? Like, it depends. There's so much context that you have to take into account.
In that particular case, it would be like, what is the total value of the network? Because the network, the value of the network has gone up over time.
So for Bitcoin to be insecure, like in a very general sense, I would have to say that the value of the network should be so much greater than like the value or the amount of security it has.
The difficulty of the hash. Yeah.
Is it? I don't know. I don't know. That's
subjective.
It's not subjective, because it could be tested in the market, right? Like some person, like a billionaire or some government, could be like, you know what, I'm like gonna go after the Bitcoin blockchain. So they could try, right? And then if they could somehow make it worth their while, then that would prove it.
Yeah.
That, you know, but until that happens, it's kind of like we just don't know.
Well,
is it enough security? I don't know.
Until that it's secure until it isn't, I guess. But going back to the
but I think you would grant though that like if we have more hash, like if there's more miners and faster miners and more powerful miners today than yesterday, then we don't know if we're secure, but we can at least safely assume that we are more secure today than we were yesterday. But maybe not, because maybe the evil doers are also like getting faster computers.
So that's the question. It's like how accessible are these devices? Is it like financially sustainable to be able to go after the Bitcoin network?
It's tough, because for someone to attack the Bitcoin blockchain, they'd have to waste a lot of money, right? Like attacks come in the form of maybe censorship, where they're choosing not to accept certain transactions onto the blockchain, so they're just letting them sit in the mempool and they're deliberately ignoring them. That's one form of attack. So in that particular attack, the miner who is ignoring those potential transactions, they're leaving all those fees, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they could just take those transactions and put them into their block and collect the fees. So for them to choose not to, they're ignoring those fees. At a certain point, those fees are going to amount to a lot of money. You know, like another miner.
So what's that mempool? Like how does that attack work?
The mempool is where, like, so on any node, all of the unconfirmed transactions live in the mempool, and then the miners will look at the mempool, and then usually they choose the highest fees,
whichever has the highest
transactions. Usually, but they don't have to do it that way. Mm-hmm. They can do it any way they want, and there are examples of miners mining transactions that had unreasonably low fees, and then likely it was some sort of a collusion or a cooperation, I should say, between the person who was creating the transaction and the miner. Like maybe they had a side deal, maybe they were getting paid in cash or by check or something outside of the Bitcoin blockchain. So for instance, there was an ordinal that was inscribed a few months ago, and it was just one transaction in the whole block, and it took up almost 4 megabytes. So it was like they maximized the amount of space you could even use on the block, and they only paid, I think it was like $250 in fees.
Really?
Yeah. So you got to imagine that obviously, and this was Luxor Mining that did that block. So they obviously had some kind of an agreement with that person, whoever it was that made that transaction. Whatever reason it was worth it to them to leave all the other transactions and the thousands of dollars that they could have gotten from those transactions
to not include it in that block.
So if you imagine an attacker, right? Like they must have a lot of resources, first of all, right? To try
be ignoring the mempool and the value that's associated.
And then what are they getting out of it, right? Like becomes the question, like what are they trying to do?
So my follow-up question would be, what is the vulnerability that shows itself whenever the mempool transactions are ignored? So like why does the attacker choose to ignore these transactions?
Well, so you can imagine there's discussions about the potential for like whitelists and blacklists. So I always think of what was it, Mr. Miracle, the Kevin O'Leary. So from Mr. Shark Wonderful. Tank, whatever, Mr. Wonderful, yeah. Mr. Wonderful. Pardon me, I'm confusing him with a comic book character. So there was like 2 years ago, he was going on the TVs talking about he wanted to start some kind of a coalition or a group of people who were going to deliberately refuse to accept Chinese mined Bitcoin. So the whole thing was like the environment and the government or whatever's wrong with China, right? So he was like, we're not going to accept Chinese Bitcoin. Okay. Like they got to be, good, clean Bitcoin. And so you can imagine maybe there being some sort of ideological thing at some point, like maybe governments trying to enforce some kind of rules or some kind of, we're from now on only Bitcoin that were mined with renewable energy is allowed, and all the other ones are going to be, you can imagine people trying to push their ideologies. Like we waste a lot of money on war, right? So it's going to be another war.
I mean, war would there be like war within the Bitcoin network?
Well, theoretically there could be. So if an attacker has 51% hash rate, what that means is that they can produce more blocks faster than the rest of the network can. If they don't, right? Like if they didn't have 51% hash rate, then they're still competing with all the rest of the network. And so there's you know.
So well, I guess what I was trying to ask would be more so like, in terms of accepting transactions or denying transactions in times of war within an ecosystem that's fully backed by Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
What's the likelihood of wars being more prominent or less prominent?
I think this situation with ordinals and inscriptions, I can easily see that turning into some big battle. Already many prominent Bitcoiners have just very blatantly said that ordinals are an attack on Bitcoin. So I mean, it's...
How do you feel about the block size and ordinals?
Well, I mean, the decision for a particular block size, I think, is arbitrary. But I do think it's important not to like just keep fudging with the block size. Like I don't think it's useful to have a shifting block size. So it's just the block is whatever size it needs to be to take all the transactions. There are certain reasons not to do that. But other than that, like ultimately it's going to be a protocol change, right? Like whatever the war is really about, someone is going to come out and say, you know what, we need a change. We need a fork. And I think I could see that happening. But a fork is you just pick a side. Or you can have both, right? You can have it both ways. That's the wonderful thing about a fork, is that your private keys work on both chains. So you get both coins. If you think this new fork is going to be good, then, good for you. But if you think it's going to be stupid, then you have this wonderful opportunity, maybe like for the first minute, where you could like sell it all for Bitcoin and hope that you get as much Bitcoin as you can, Like there's this guy Panda who is pretty prominent in our Telegram chat for the Bitcoin Brunch, and he always tells the story of like the greatest trade of his life was when the fork with Bitcoin Cash happened, and he sold all of his Bitcoin Cash for Bitcoin, and then he just says it was a glorious trade. Because
did he ever say how much he got out of it? Like if it was 1-to-1? Or?
No, but I'll tell you that he's like in his like mid 40s, and he's retired, and he moved from Chicago to Florida, and he's just chilling. So I don't know how much he made, but he made enough to chill.
Yeah. Well, like, I guess what he was asking more so was like, if the fork happens, it would be, if you have one Bitcoin, you would have one Bitcoin on both wallets.
I don't remember how much Bitcoin Cash went up to, but there was like a short period of time where they were really close in price, and then after like a few hours, it's it started to drop and drop and drop, and until to this day where it's like Bitcoin Cash is never. Well, I think there was 2 days last week where Bitcoin Cash actually like increased in price compared to Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin Cash people were all like, "Yes, proof, we did it!" And we're like, "Okay, guys, like enjoy yourselves."
For the 2 days.
Yeah, for these 2 days, you got a long way to go. You're gonna need like another 1,000 of those days to catch up to Bitcoin in terms of dollar price.
So, how in favor of forks? Have you agreed with any forks that come out, like SegWit or?
Well, so SegWit's a soft fork, right? I mean, I think the importance of distinguishing between soft and hard forks is that soft forks are backwards compatible. So people who have not upgraded to SegWit, or who refuse to upgrade to SegWit, people who refuse to upgrade to Taproot, their transactions are still valid. Their blockchain is still valid, and so that's, I think, important in terms of the
valid when compared to like the native blockchain.
Well, no, it is the native blockchain. Yeah. It's just that they don't, like if they were a miner, they wouldn't be processing Taproot or SegWit transactions. But that would put them, again, it puts them at a disadvantage, because now you got all these other miners who are accepting those transactions, and they're going to get all the money from those transactions. So I'm okay with the idea of soft forks. It's the free marketness of it. It's like if we agree with the change that's being made, we can adopt it. If we disagree with the change that's being made, we can reject it. And then they call that like user-activated soft fork or user-rejected soft fork. We don't have to go with the changes if we don't think that they're valid. So Bitcoin Cash, like I really wasn't actually paying attention when that whole thing happened. So it's kind of funny, like to see. Like I was kind of tuned out for a few years, and then I came back in, and I had no idea like how crypto had just like exploded, and all these like altcoins and stuff. Like I'm talking about like 2 years ago. Like I was just getting back into things like in the end of 2020 and early 2021. And so it's like just kind of shocking to like see like, whoa, like all this kind of stuff happened when I wasn't paying attention for 3-4 years, and It's absurd. So it's, changes to the blockchain should be taken very, very seriously. They should happen under like tremendous consideration and debate and scrutiny. And they should be really, really hard to do as well. Like you need Nakamoto consensus. You need the majority of the nodes and the miners to go. I mean, you don't even necessarily need the majority of the miners, right? Because what's going to happen is if the miners choose not to go with what you or I might consider to be the real blockchain, the value of that blockchain theoretically should drop if most of the users so that's kind of like Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin. A lot of the miners, they wanted the changes that were going to be the Bitcoin Cash changes because it was going to make them more money. Like, we can get bigger blocks so we can stuff more transactions into every single block. That's great for the miners, but the users were like, nah.
Wouldn't that actually make the miners less money because of the fact that there's more space to include more transactions, that the value of the fee to put your transaction into the block?
Yeah, that's a great point, right? So if you know that the block can fit any transaction, why would you ever put a high fee?
Exactly.
There's going to be no fee market for transactions. It's just going to be, just put your transactions through. And that's not...
So now I guess this goes into like a follow-up question in terms of Bitcoin and its utility as a monetary, like cash or some type of dollar type thing. Where does the bigger block size help transactions be passed more frequently, or more transactions be passed?
Absolutely.
And does it give it a better use case for money versus, because right now with the higher transaction fees,
it's hard to do.
There's less incentive to be doing transactions because of the fact that
I mean, we saw fees for months like in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 100 satoshis per virtual byte. Some people were spending 1,500 satoshis per virtual byte. So for most of Bitcoin's history, people could get 1 satoshi per virtual byte transactions in. So someone else was paying 1,500 times that in fees to get their ordinal inscriptions put onto the blockchain. That's insane. Yes, absolutely. Like if you have unlimited block size, that's going to make it much easier to get transactions into the blockchain. There's no doubt about that. But at what cost? So I think this is the question that Bitcoiners sort of, they decided, okay, well, actually no, like it's, as you kind of just mentioned, it screws the incentives too much. And so limited block space, fee market, the highest fees usually get their transactions processed. That was the decision they made.
Yeah.
But now, so in terms of how can we actually make Bitcoin more money, that's what the layer 2s. No, I don't think it's a perfect solution. I also don't think Bitcoin is perfect, right? So I definitely see the layer 2s as imperfect solutions, but I still think they're much better solutions than a lot of the systems we have yet. Now, are they... I don't remember the word now when you make something bigger. Scalable?
Yeah.
Are they scalable? I don't know. I kind of feel like with time they will be. Like Lightning Network. Lightning Network's really interesting, right? So all of the Bitcoin denominated in the Lightning Network is actually Bitcoin held and locked in a multi-signature transaction. So it's all real Bitcoin. And how much value can be transacted in the Lightning Network? Well, it's actually not limited by how much is in there. It's limited by how fast we can send it back and forth. So even with 1 Bitcoin, if you can send it back and forth 1,000 times, you could do 1,000 Bitcoin worth of transactions on the Lightning Network. So there's stuff that's happening that's going to kind of address the cashy part of Bitcoin, I think, with time. But they weren't willing to focus on that at the sacrifice of, I think, many of the other features that make Bitcoin like as important as it is.
Like, which features would you be referring to?
I mean, in terms of the block size, I think it's probably going to be security. Security is a big aspect of it. The ease of being able to run your own nodes. So if the blocks could be any size, then theoretically we might have many times more transactions today than we actually do have. And so right now a node is maybe 500 gigs. Maybe the nodes could be a terabyte, 10 terabytes, right? So now with time, that's not going to be a big deal, right? Like in 10 years, maybe 10 terabytes is nothing. But today it is a big deal. And that's why most blockchains only have like a handful of nodes.
Yeah. Right now the entire network is over 500 gigabytes, but it's not close to the. I don't think it's.
Yeah, since the last time I checked, right? Last time I checked, it was less than 5, but it's around there.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about, I mean, you can run that on a 1 terabyte hard drive.
Those are accessible for now, but with bigger block sizes, okay, soon enough you might need 100 terabytes, 200 terabytes, especially if there's no limit.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, it doesn't become accessible to everyone to be able to run their own node.
There become bandwidth issues. So right now, the blocks, I guess, the biggest that a block can be is 4 megabytes. So, and there's only one block every 10 minutes. Sometimes it's less than 10 minutes. Sometimes it's a little more, right? So, so you're talking about 4 megabytes in 10 minutes. Like almost anyone, anywhere in the world can do that. They can participate in that if they wanted to run a node. So there's a lot of interesting implications to that. You're talking about people in the middle of nowhere could be connected to a satellite and they can be running a Bitcoin node. And the satellite just comes over the overhead once or twice a day, and they just download, however many blocks it was since the last time the satellite came around. That's wonderful. Talking about people in remote places can be participating in the world economy. That's cool. Even if they don't have like Starlink,
Yeah, I think that the fact that it can be used globally will definitely help so many people, help a lot of economies grow. A lot of industries will be coming from this. And in terms of like efficiency, I think that the financial incentive to getting the cheap renewable energy is ultimately like a really good step forward in like our energy production and helping society improve itself in terms of on that front. The fact that the race to renewable energy, cheap energy, can for Bitcoin, the network can help society just try to get more sustainable energy and not contribute so much to global warming, and so that has the added benefit of like it's just an added benefit that money doesn't normally have.
Yeah. So let me shout out Alana Mediavilla. She's doing a documentary called Dirty Coin, and it's specifically addressing like questions about Bitcoin and energy, like the relationship between Bitcoin mining and energy, the impact that Bitcoin mining has on energy systems in different communities throughout the planet. So a lot of people don't understand like what it means that Bitcoin, uses as much energy as it does. Especially when people don't recognize a value in Bitcoin, they just obviously see that any resources expended towards Bitcoin's production is a waste. That tends to be the way they look at it. What they don't see is all the positive impacts that Bitcoin mining has. So as you mentioned, Bitcoin miners, they chase after the cheapest energy possible because this is the only way to maintain competition, right? Like if you're spending like in a city 12 cents per, is it kilowatt or watt? I'm pretty sure it's per kilowatt. If you're spending 12 cents, you can't compete with someone who's paying like 1 cent free energy, 5 cents, and so you also have to pay for your hardware too. So this is really interesting. They're chasing after the cheapest energy possible, and then where they set themselves up, they create what they call like a base load. So it's essentially they're creating 24-hour demand for the electrical grid. Mm-hmm. They're evening out the volatility of energy demand, because what most people don't realize is that the energy that we consume, right, like the lights that are shining on us and the camera that's filming us, like this energy has to be produced constantly, 24/7.
Be readily available.
We don't have giant batteries that are powering our civilization. No, it's all powered by like on-demand energy. Mm-hmm. And the problem with that is that the machines that it takes to produce this energy, they cost a lot of money to run. So if you're not selling the energy, right, then you end up turning off the machines. So there's a lot of different considerations. I mean, one consideration is that there are communities in the world that don't have 24/7 power because the companies that actually use the power are only open during the day. So there are communities that literally have their power shut off at night. Not in the United States as far as I know, but I'm talking about like in developing nations. So if a miner comes and sets up shop in one of these communities, because even though it's a poor community, the power is cheap, they now create this 24/7 demand for that energy. And so now there are communities today in the world that have power 24/7 because a miner chose to start mining in that community.
And they spend so much.
They offset,
enough, right?
yeah,
Spends enough.
They offset the
Yeah.
value of what it costs to
No,
run.
I'm saying that they spend enough to where they make
Exactly.
it that they have to create it because
Yeah,
there was no
exactly.
need to for production. That's what I meant.
Yeah, it's gotta be enough, obviously, to make it the energy companies,
worthwhile,
worth their time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just one example. Like another example of the kind of impact that Bitcoin mining can have is, let's say, Texas. There was an example in the last year where they had like one of these crazy cold fronts that came
Yeah,
in,
that was broke the
unexpected,
grid.
and the Bitcoin miners. Because of the agreement they have with ERCOT, which is like the energy company over there, they actually shut down production. They got paid by ERCOT to shut down production, but by shutting down, they made energy available for the rest of the grid. And this was in like emergency situation. So at that moment, it was much more valuable to the energy producers to give it to someone else, and then in turn, they were willing to pay the miners to use it. Now, in another situation, if the miners weren't participating in this kind of a setup and then they didn't have to shut down or they refused to shut down, you're talking about maybe people would die in their homes of cold because brownouts. So there's a lot of impacts, but Bitcoin miners, they're going to chase cheap energy. They're going to build up energy infrastructure wherever they go, and I think overall it's going to be a good thing for humanity. Yeah, I think it's going to be a good thing in the long run.
I've seen this product of a in-home heater that it just runs off of a Bitcoin miner.
Well, you bring up a great topic because a lot of people don't know this. Satoshi Nakamoto had already proposed, I think it was in 2009, that basically a lot of the world heats their homes with electrical energy. Some people, they'll use natural gas, some people use wood and other things, but a lot of people in the world have electric furnaces that just run off the power grid. Well, in 2009, Satoshi had already suggested replacing electric heaters with mining. He said it's free heat or free Bitcoin, one or the other, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever you used to spend on heat, just spend that much on the
mining
miners,
Bitcoin.
and there you go. Like you're going to get Bitcoin in the process, but you're also going to get heat. So really, we could totally reshape our world infrastructure if we did a lot of that. Like, I mean, think about, even in South Florida, where we hate the heat, but I love a hot shower. Love a hot shower. I could be heating my water with a Bitcoin miner. We could be heating the water with Bitcoin miners, and it's that's kind of cool.
There's a few steps to get there, but I see your point.
Obviously, it takes a lot of steps to get there. I mean, you kind of have to rejigger your infrastructure in your home or your building to adapt to it. Yeah. But maybe like in the future, buildings in the future, instead of building it with like this electrical infrastructure, we could build it with like this Bitcoin mining infrastructure. Mm-hmm. I think it would be cool, and it would be cool.
It would be. It's not just hot showers; it's also the laundry machines.
Sure, yeah, the laundry machines, the hot water for the laundry.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you need heat. It doesn't, not very hot, because I think it only goes to a certain temperature, right? Yeah. But we only need it, for so much. So it's just really interesting. I mean, I think about that a lot, about like our society, and I think this is an effect of the money. It's an effect of fiat, like government command and authority. We have all these negative externalities that we don't address. I'll give you one real simple example. Almost everyone I know has a refrigerator. In fact, I don't know anyone who doesn't have a refrigerator, but all these refrigerators have these coils in the back of them that just release heat the whole time. Mm. So to make the inside of the refrigerator cold, it has to make something else hot. And what is it making hot? It's making your house hot. It's making your apartment hot. So you now have to run your AC more to make up for the heat that you're your refrigerator is producing. So like even before like the idea of Bitcoin mining even came into my head, like we could have been heating our water with like the coils on the back of our refrigerators. Like but because we're so focused on like consumerism and like I want my refrigerator and I want to choose my brand and all that stuff, that we don't have like a consciousness of like all this waste.
Yeah, we need to reclaim more.
I think you're right, but I also think we're missing the point of how difficult it would be to turn that to heat the water to then.
I don't think it would be difficult. It's just that we would have to do things very differently.
So I think to a degree, it would be more cost if it would cost more to do something like that. But the fact that Bitcoin is now a thing, it helps reduce the overall, or like increases the incentive for doing something like that, because now there's an immediate monetary return for reclaiming that energy, versus in the other way, where if Bitcoin wasn't a thing, then it'd just be like, oh, we know it could be more efficient. It's just more so like it's a project. It's not so much.
It's a culture.
Yeah,
I'm not sure because I came up as this is it's a tangent.
Yeah.
I remember way back now, we went to the Keys a lot, the Florida Keys for you people listening. I asked my uncle, I'm like, why don't golf carts have regenerative braking or regenerative charging?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, his thing was, it wouldn't be cost effective to put a generator or a regenerative breaker that small into something to get back this much power.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have a similar issue in terms of how much it would cost to do that one thing to then reward.
Yeah, it's
versus the other one.
It's design choices. Like we've made certain design choices as a society, as an economy, that kind of trap us in ways of doing things. I mean, I work on boats in my day job. I'm a yacht electrician. I mean, there are there are coolant lines for air conditioners that run from like one end of a boat to another. So you're talking about like a little metal tube that like literally just running, 100 feet down a boat to provide this coolant, refrigerant, I guess, is really what it's called, refrigerant. Just to like run the air conditioner. So if they can do that on a boat, I mean, I don't know, like we could stick some, like, okay, right now your water heater is one thing, right? And then your refrigerator is another thing. Well, we could like have a combo water heater refrigerator unit, where like the back of the refrigerator is your water heater and the front is your refrigerator. I don't know. The coils on the back of the refrigerator could just simply be connected to some sort of like central system instead of being their own independent system. It's just a matter of design choices. We're kind of stuck with the way things are now. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you. Yes, it would take a lot of money and engineering and all kinds of stuff to do things differently than the way we do them now. But we definitely should do things differently, not necessarily in that one particular way.
I propose. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I'm just saying to get it there from where we are now, like the current position where you have the water in your house would have to move.
Well, so here's a rabbit hole that's like tangentially related to this tangent that we're going on. I mean, I think one of the main reasons why our society is the way it is has to do with patents and copyrights and trademarks, is the intellectual property system that we have here. We sort of create these protections around ideas and around procedures and methodologies of producing things. And then this, in a way, kind of crowds out creativity and innovation at a very small level. Like we don't have a lot of like regional innovation. We don't hear about like the random inventor who came up with 1,000 inventions in his life. And we don't ever hear those stories anymore in 2023. But that's like the story of Edison or Tesla. Like these guys went through thousands of different inventions. Today, I feel like it's so difficult because so many different aspects of our reality are monopolized through IP. The government has created all of these like barriers about where you're allowed to do things, what you're allowed to do. So I do think a part of the problem is also that our economy does not encourage experimentation for the sake of discovering new things. Like our economy encourages profit seeking and maximizing profit. And not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but like inventions are not necessarily profitable. You have to and some inventions are very unprofitable, right? So like you have to go through a lot of different ideas to find the great ones. And it seems to me like as a society, we are stuck going through very few ideas in a kind of slow motion process. Whereas I think if as a radical thinker, right? Like this is one of the reasons why I'm so attracted to Bitcoin, because I believe in freedom and in autonomy and self-determination. Like, people should be able to do whatever they want to do as long as they're not hurting other individuals. And to me, that includes things like inventions. Like, people should be able to invent or experiment with or practice with whatever technologies they want as long as they're not hurting someone. And so this could be applied to so many different industries. I mean, it could be the computers, it could be the cars, it could be these cameras, it could be microphones. Like, all of these technologies are so heavily laden with IP and IP protectionism. You know, like, you hear these stories about like Samsung is suing Apple, is suing Google, is suing Microsoft, and they're always suing each other and suing each other for billions of dollars. And to me, like, they are monopolizing an ever, I don't know, I had in one of my essays recently, I said, like, basically they don't see the value of freedom. You know, like, they don't realize that we could be increasing the profit of our society and of our economy if we had more freedom. Like, if people could actually experience more utility in their lives. But instead, we have so heavily compartmentalized this rent-seeking behavior of, no, you got to pay, you know, for so many aspects of your existence. It's kind of bothersome. I mean, the easiest example to think of when it comes to IP, like, to get off of like the physical objects, like the inventions, how about like movies and music and video games? Like, here are these entire industries that are completely founded on IP. You know, like, many people don't think that Hollywood would even exist if it wasn't for the fact that then they could turn around and monetize their IP, right? Like, if we had no guarantee that we could, you know, be the only ones to make money off of our product, then we're not going to make it. This seems to be like the underlying argument that I almost get almost all the time when I bring this kind of topic up. And to me, I think this is very revealing, right? Like, if the only reason why you are creating something, producing something, doing something is because it makes you money, okay, that's fine, all well and good, but that reveals something about yourself, right? Like, we have this notion of people doing things for joy and for pleasure and for happiness, right? Like, you know, find the work that doesn't even feel like work, we say to some people. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, find something economically productive that brings you joy. Why? Because when you're going to be happy while you're making money, instead of most of the world who is not happy while they're making money. How did I get?
I don't know. You went on a tangent there, and you like kind of lost.
Down with IP is what I'm saying.
That's what, because
it's about innovation, right? Like I think people should make movies because they want to make movies. People should make music because they want to make music. People should make art because they want to make art. People should make video games because they want to make video games. Now, how do they pay for their these things? How do they pay for their lives? I don't know. Figure it out.
They have figured it out.
No, they haven't.
No, they haven't.
They have a government like,
but that's
infrastructure to violently enforce their idea of being able to keep profit.
But I think that's, you just said a good point. Do the thing you want, but then don't expect to make money off of it, and people don't want to buy it.
I don't think the issue is making money off of it. It's more so making a living off of it. It doesn't matter what.
Well, he said
but it's not making a living. See, that's not the problem. People don't have a problem making a living being creative. They have problems getting filthy rich being creative.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're doing this for the money.
They want.
Okay. When you say people, do you mean the artists that created the product, or the?
I mean, they're the worst at it, right? Like, the whole structure.
Because imagine being someone who creates some type of character that's being used by other people, and
like Mickey Mouse.
You didn't create that character.
Now,
correct. Like, it does some in that particular sense.
You create a character. Great. That's good for you. I love stories. I love narratives. I love fiction. That's all wonderful. I love being entertained. Mm-hmm. But what does the universe owe you? Because this is what we're saying. We're like, IP is saying that basically, if anyone enjoys this, they owe me because I created it.
No.
That's exactly what it's saying.
That's the artists would. That's what people would say.
So all of IP, whether it's a book or a software or anything, it's like, if anyone benefits from this intellectual media that I've produced, I should benefit as the creator. This is what the notion is. And I mean, to me, there's no analog in the universe. Like, we breathe the air for free, the water flows for free, the rain drops for free, the sun rises for free. But we're going to say, like, I have an idea, I came up with a character, and now I'm going to sue some, like, mother, some housewife who, like, uploaded a torrent, you know, of the Harry Potter film or something because, you know, that's evil. When, like, what I'm saying is, like, no, like, that whole thing of suing the mother and that's evil. Like, going after her over data, like zeros and ones.
So
on a
no one
computer.
should make a living off of data then. Make money.
They shouldn't. They shouldn't make a
want-
living off monopolization of data. Like, people can make you can make money off data
Because like I'm
people
saying, like,
still sell albums, right? People still sell like I buy albums.
Yeah.
Sometimes I buy things. You could sell merchandise, right? So like if you're a musician, you could throw a concert and people pay to get tickets to go to the concert. But like to pay to listen to your song, I don't know. Like they were playing it on the radio earlier today. Why should I have to pay now that I'm at home on my
Because the
computer?
radio station paid for that.
Yeah,
No, they didn't.
Of course they
Yeah,
did.
they did.
No, they didn't.
Of course they did.
Yeah.
They paid.
Who did they pay?
They paid the label.
Yeah.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, they pay the label.
Nah, I don't think so.
The label, yeah.
Yeah, maybe in
either
some
the label
cases.
maybe the label paid them, or the label paid the radio station to play the song.
Oh, wait,
One-
what?
Or the label.
Oh, so
Paid.
they paid them?
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So in those instances, shouldn't the audience also be getting paid then? Because the radio station is selling the radio waves are monopolized by the FCC. So you got this company that comes in and licenses the radio waves from the FCC, and they're producing this show. So they've already engaged in like this monopolization behavior, this rent-seeking behavior, and then they're getting paid by a third party to put a song on these airwaves that are in the air. Like the radio is literally in the air. Like there are radio waves going through my head right now, and these assholes aren't paying me a penny.
Yeah, but you can't catch it to listen to.
Oh,
that,
you want to bet?
to that
I got a
frequency.
device right here that can catch it.
But you paid
So
for
I
that
can-
device to have that frequency.
I bought the device, but
that's what I'm saying. You paid
but,
for
but
it.
I already paid for it. I finished paying for it, right?
But the company paid to make it.
yeah, but
sell
I
it to
paid
you.
them to make it, right?
Okay,
Didn't I?
so is
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying there's a chain that it went from one to the other to then you can now listen to it.
in terms of the radio stations and the labels, the reason
Yeah.
why the labels pay the radio stations is more so for advertisement,
For marketing.
for
Yeah, I
marketing
get it.
purposes.
Yeah,
so
I
they're
know.
this art. Look at this.
I'm familiar
artist.
with ASCAP
Exactly.
and BMI and how all that stuff works. But what I'm really like, there's some song, for some reason we were listening to the radio because there was a radio on the boat, and so they turned the radio on, and so I'm listening to like I never listen to radio, so I'm hearing all these pop songs, and there's like this one pop song that they played at least 4 times in the whole day, and I'm like, man, they're playing this song 4 times today. This
That
is
happens.
so boring.
They do
like
that.
there's millions of songs out there, and they can only they got to play this 4 times in one day. Yes, of course it happens because of like all of the fiat mindset that like underlies our culture. Like we want everyone to listen to the same song.
Also, people like that song.
Yeah, I think that people just are requesting.
Or
that
also
song.
want to
It's
listen to
trending.
that song.
But
It's an open market.
I'm not saying you're wrong because that does happen. What you're saying.
okay,
I'm
so
also saying
probably
music is a taste.
yes, maybe most people listening to that radio station want to hear that song. I'm totally willing to believe that because why else would they bother
Yeah,
listening
exactly.
to that radio station?
You
But-
just change the channel.
But if they could listen to anything, like most people haven't heard most of the music in the world, right? Like they haven't
No.
heard most of the styles, they haven't heard most of the artists. So like how do they even know that they like that song more than all the other songs? Like they don't. So again,
more than
listen
other
to whatever
songs,
you
we don't
want.
know.
Listen to whatever you want, but I don't want this like system of monopoly violence. Of like the radio system is another example, right? Like the radio waves, as I mentioned, going through my head, like they've monopolized that. So these radio stations that I don't agree with, that I don't support, like they have this collusion with the government that's beyond my control, and they're benefiting from this collusion. Why can't I use the radio waves? Why can't I, as a musician, be pumping out my own music on the radio waves? Why? Because the government says I can't do that. Those radio waves belong to these people for the terms of their license. And if I want to get on those radio waves, I have to become a millionaire and start a radio company and bid for those airwaves. And I mean that's not fair.
So I have no idea how it works, but I was gonna ask a question.
Yeah, that's what he said was accurate on in terms of like how certain frequencies
I'm
are.
not saying it's
okay.
not.
Okay,
I'm
well-
saying can't you just get another radio wave?
So, I mean, I think there is a certain spectrum that's available to the public, but it's like a very limited.
Yeah, so the spectrum, like radio waves that are just frequencies, and there's only a certain amount of frequencies that fit within that area of radio wave.
I was asking, I don't know.
So. And see, like, if, granted, so at some point in the past, the government made this decision, right? Like, so we want to organize the airwaves so that we don't, we limit interference. We don't have pirate stations and all this stuff. So they decided to create this system, and we went down a certain path. But I have to wonder, like, what kind of a world would we have today if we didn't go down that path? If we decided not to monopolize the airwaves, like, would we have better encryption technology? Would we have better telecommunications technology today? Because we'd have to find a way to pull a signal out of a noisy universe. I mean, maybe we would be a more advanced society today if we would not have gone down this easy path that seemed to make sense. But it comes with all these negative externalities, and the negative externalities are the opportunity costs that we'll never know existed because we as a society chose, no. Power 96 belongs to Power 96, and Y100 belongs to Y100, and it doesn't belong to you or me, even though it's literally light in the air.
Yeah, but it's also a very limited amount of, that wave only exists on that one wave. So if multiple people are using that same wave, then no one could get anything through.
That's what I'm saying. That's not necessarily true.
It's too much noise.
There is noise, but we have ways to find data through noise, to pull information out of noise. And I think that it might be, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, right? I didn't study enough physics. I should have studied more.
In that case, there would have to be a device that would be able to hear this one radio wave and pull out for different sets of information.
Maybe it's just looking for a specific pattern. So there's all this noise, but it knows that I'm talking to you, and you have this specific.
Granted, maybe now in a day where we have more technology, maybe that is more accessible, more doable. I don't know. I don't even know that's a thing yet.
I think we could have more technology today.
But back then, when they created that system, then there was no way for them to separate the information if it can exist.
But you got to imagine that when they created this system, it wasn't even a problem. Right, so when they created this system, they didn't even have the excuse that the radio waves were clogged. So
but they could foresee it. I mean,
that's foreseeable. There's a limited amount because it would be clogged now. If they were public, it would be clogged now.
And so and sometimes you get and they're not clogged.
I mean, alternatively,
I'm saying they would be clogged if it was free.
Alternatively, something that's synonymous would be the internet protocol for IP addresses. IPv4 has a certain amount of bits that we could use. And at the time that IPv4 was created, they thought there's so many addresses, we'll never reach that.
Okay, so the example I wanted to give in regards to the crowding of the airwaves is cell phones. So everyone's got a cell phone. We've got 3 cell phones probably at least in this room, and somehow our cell phones know which signals are for my phone, which signals are for your phone, which signals are for your phone. We could all be on the same carrier, and our phones would never have any trouble knowing whose signals were for whom. So maybe in the 70s and the 80s it would have been an issue, but if it was an issue, I think we would have come up with solutions probably quicker.
So 2 things on that.
Yeah,
maybe go. 1. Not in terms of crisis.
What do you mean?
So whenever there's a crisis, phone lines are jam-packed.
You mean overloaded?
Overloaded, yeah, jam-packed.
Yeah, but this is a different problem, because that's a problem with the centralization of the transmission of the communications, right? So it's not a problem with the airwaves themselves, but it's that these towers are getting too many. So if we decentralize the telecommunications system, every phone is a tower. And think about it, man. Every cell phone sends and receives signals.
Yeah, but it's how far can you decentralize it for each phone to have its own spot or its own tower without you just having 1,000?
Well,
you already have 1,000 towers.
Issue with
so how many towers
the issue with decentralization would be latency. The more nodes.
Yeah, well, we've got 5G now, right? And 5G is supposed to be really fast. So how fast is 5G? Do you guys know?
Ridiculously fast.
Ridiculously fast. So
but Continue.
No, so I'm just saying, like, every phone, if you
a
have
lot of phones-
5G in your phone, I'm not saying you're going to be handling the entire network on your phone, but like maybe your phone could be a node
Yeah.
in a distributed telecommunications
And
network.
if your node's busy, then it'll just hop off.
Like
on the other one.
your node might not even connect to like every other node. It might connect to like maybe bigger nodes.
The issue with that would be is that the range that 5G has. Yeah, within us we would have great service, but our phones are all very centralized in a certain spot, location wise, physically. We would have to connect to another 5G node somewhere. Like
so then we could use 5G for the close stuff. We could use 4G for the far stuff. 4G is good enough for a telephone call. 3G is good enough for a telephone call. 2G, like they're all good enough for telephone calls.
Yes.
So like we don't even need that much bandwidth for the basic
for the most basic no, but you do need it when you want to
high
watch
bandwidth, obviously.
when you're going to watch
no
any
doubt
sound.
about that. No doubt about that. And we would have a completely different telecommunications infrastructure if the rules were different. Like if we had if every a mesh network, think about like a global mesh network or a neighborhood mesh network, right? Like those are two very different scales. But if you can get it to work at the neighborhood, and if every neighborhood has a neighborhood mesh network, then every neighborhood needs is just like one tower to connect to like the nearby neighborhoods.
Correct.
And so then within that neighborhood, you got the 5G thing going, and then between neighborhoods, you got the 4G thing going, and it's all cool. It's all gravy. Yeah, like the technology. We already know the technology exists, and we can therefore probably invent different ones that just do
Better
what we
one.
want them to do. Yeah, better.
Yeah, the mesh network thing is actually a really cool idea, in my opinion. Having just all the information spread out across different devices so that not one device is going to be held accountable for everything.
I mean, to me, it's also like from a consumer level, it's also about sharing. Right? Like I live in a building that's got mostly, let's say, like retired aged people. A lot of them, if they use internet, they're using very little. Yeah. Like maybe the most that they're using is like their Netflix. Okay, so they got that high bandwidth, like TV show going on. But I promise you, no matter what they're doing, I'm doing a lot more with my bandwidth. If we were sharing our bandwidth, right, like it could save people money, right? So that's one thing.
Maybe you could like offer them some type of compensation for their bandwidth, whatever they're not using, even though they probably have since they have a surplus. However, the issue with the mesh network is that you would have to trust every device that's on the network.
We would have to come up with a methodology that would not require trust, right?
Yeah.
Like Bitcoin. I'm not going to say like Bitcoin is not it, right? Bitcoin is money, but we could come up with some methodology for transmitting data, obviously encrypted.
It would have to be encrypted for sure.
And so if it's encrypted and if the person who's transmitting the data cannot break the encryption, then I don't think there's no trust. What you'd have to trust is that they're going to pass the message along, right?
It's not just pass the message along. You also want to make sure that you want that aspect, but you also want to make sure that the message is secure. As in only the receiver is reading the message it's not a broadcast.
But that's what encryption is for, right? So we already have encryption. That's already a thing. So I don't see what the problem is.
No, it's just more so like making sure that,
you gotta be
whatever
aware.
System that goes into place for
we
something
got to cover
like
our bases. That's for sure. Do you guys know about Nostr?
Yeah, we talked about it not too long ago with who we talked about.
Uh-oh.
I forgot what.
Cut this out of the podcast.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Notes and other stuff transmitted by relays.
Yeah, it's like a decentralized Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting potentials, right? So like you could have a Nostr relay that's just sort of like a Dropbox, and then the event might just sit there and wait until the person finally comes and like collects it. So it's like a mailbox, right? Like so when the person collects their mail, then the relay can delete it, right? So now you're talking about a circumstance where if you're not certain that the message or the event could be delivered immediately, but you know that like this particular relay, like maybe you're paying them, I don't know, like they'll just hold that message there indefinitely encrypted until the person with the right keys comes and takes it, and then they can delete the message, right? And they'll never know what it was. There's a lot of interesting technologies, I think, that are going to come up to address a lot of these concerns.
Are you on Nostr?
No. It's so funny. Like, I'm really, really bullish on Nostr, but I'm not on it because it's just none of it doesn't really work for me yet. And I think it's really early days, and I'm more of I prefer a polished experience than a rough experience. So I'm encouraging the development. I think it's
Because Nostr is a protocol, and you need to interact with it with like specific clients who are.
Yeah, well, there's rules, right? So there's rules to how the protocol works, and as long as you're following the rules, you could do whatever else you want. So you can have all kinds of different relays or all kinds of different clients. Like you could have clients that are more focused on media sharing versus like, let's say, just regular posts, or maybe more focused on music, or like it could be a marketplace for listings of items for sale. Or the relay could have all of that stuff, and then the clients maybe could segregate those things. But it's super early days. Like you join almost any Nostr client, and then you just get like these horrible global feeds where it's like you're just seeing tons and tons of posts, and it's like Reddit, like the front page of Reddit, and you're like, I don't want to see half of this stuff. And so it's just not for me yet. But I do hope to in the near future join Nostr. I want to start like a local South Florida Bitcoiners relay, so it will be like just for the South Florida Bitcoiners, kind of like a little private community to talk in and communicate in.
That'd be cool.
So hopefully by the end of the year, I'll be on Nostr. And the interesting thing that happened just this week was that Damus, which is the iOS app, like a really popular iOS app, in terms of Nostr, and Apple's telling them like, oh, you got to remove Zaps, which are the payments. So you could zap a post, you could send Bitcoin to oh, I like this post, here's 100 Satoshis, here's 1,000 Satoshis. Well, Apple considered that to be like sales of some kind, like digital sales.
They consider that
like an in-app purchase.
And so they
want to cut.
They're going to ban the app,
unless they get a cut.
But there's no, like, the thing is that it's not an in-app purchase. Like the zapping is an independent function, like it's got nothing to do with the app itself.
But it is within the app, though.
It is within the app, but the app doesn't like necessarily see any of the money. So they probably do.
That's just Apple though, because I know that they have that rule that any within app purchases they take 30%. Like even your subscription, if you do it through Apple, they're taking 30% of that subscription.
Like if you subscribe to Netflix.
Yeah, but these are literally voluntary donations. So I
think they take a percentage of donations from like.
Really?
I think so.
Wow.
Yeah, that's actually
Apple's
crazy.
bastards.
Like depending.
So what are you gonna do? Again, with this IP stuff, right? Like they've got this little fiefdom that they've
I wouldn't
created.
consider that IP stuff. I would just say that's
I'm saying like
network dominance.
The reason but the reason why they have devices and that they can institute, like they can make rules of how you use their device even after you've paid for it is because of IP. Mm-hmm. Like
because you're choosing to be
like in a free market, I would say like I don't give a shit what you say, Apple. I'm gonna brick my device, or I'm not gonna brick. Bricking is what happens when you try to, when you try to like fix, the devices should be open, right? Like when you buy a device, it should be yours. Like there should not be these implicit licenses that give them some sort of control over the device indefinitely.
So I guess that comes to where you're paying for the software.
Yeah. You would have to use a open source software
and not use iOS, but then you use the benefits of iOS.
Yeah, I know. But again, like if you do something with iOS that you're not supposed to do, they're gonna sue you. And then that goes back to like the IP monopoly. Like, why shouldn't you be able to do whatever you want? Like, why shouldn't you be able to? Because
I guess the argument there is you didn't develop that product. Or that IP or that software.
Yeah.
Like someone else took the time, made it, and now this is how they designed it to be used.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think there's a certain extent to which that's like reasonable, but then there's an extent to which it's unreasonable. I don't own an Apple device. I don't plan on buying one. So like again, maybe it's in the end user license agreement, but I think those are pretty garbage anyways. Like
they change.
Yeah, they change, and they're allowed to change without notice, and you have to, and like you agree to abide by them even if you weren't notified of the changes. This is all like just authoritarian garbage. Like in a free world, we wouldn't really tolerate these kinds of behaviors and standards. But they make a product that is well enjoyed by the U.S. public, and so like they're certainly not like a kind of a, like I'm not going to win a popularity contest with the argument. Like yes, they produced a software, they maintain a software, and that's all well and good. But
that goes for everyone. Like that goes for Microsoft. That goes for any software company. They all have the same thing.
yeah, but like to me, in terms of like physics and the way the world works, is like once that data is off their servers and it's on your servers, like I would consider my device a server. That data should be mine, like because the device is mine. But it's not, because it's not, and it's not because they put all this money and time and effort into building it. It's not mine because they have gotten the government to grant them a monopoly. Like regardless of whether they actually put the time and energy, like someone could come and buy a company and buy up all their IP. So they didn't do anything actually. They just bought the company, but they can now enforce that IP. So it's like this is just a business practice. This is the way our society and our culture does business when it comes to like ideas. Is that we let people monopolize ideas.
To a degree, I guess you can say.
It's definitely to a degree. I mean, the government can't be everywhere all the time. So obviously, like digital piracy still exists. Torrents still exist and peer-to-peer still exists.
It'll probably exist for the rest of history.
Yeah, but like should they, right? Like digital piracy really shouldn't exist. Like there should be
there should be ownership.
Think of it like this, right? So let's say you go to a movie theater. No, okay, not even a movie theater. Let me keep it simple. You buy a movie like a pay-per-view. What do they call them now? On demand. What do they call it these days?
Oh, I don't
know.
Pay-per-view on demand.
Sure, like you rent a movie on your TV, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're gonna pay like $14.99 or something or whatever it costs. And like let's you liked the movie, so. You imagine that in an economic sense, a person pays for a movie because they're hoping to enjoy it. They're hoping to get something out of it.
Correct.
So in this exchange, I get the joy of watching the movie, and this company that is selling or licensing the movie, they get the pleasure of my money in exchange for it. So everyone wins. That's great. Now let's consider the option where I pirate the movie and I didn't pay for it, right? So what do they get? Well, they get nothing. What do they lose? They lose nothing. Nothing's happened to them.
Yeah, they lost the financial incentive.
But what if I wasn't going to buy it? Like, what if I'm poor? What if I'm so poor I can't afford the $14.99 for the movie? So in this universe, in this specific contrivance that I've established, they weren't going to get a penny from me. Mm-hmm. There was no way they were going to get any money from me. Like Correct. If I get a penny, I'm going to put that penny into like buying some water,
something
I'm
else.
Thirsty.
Correct.
Yeah. But for somehow I have a computer and internet in my
and you pirate the
house,
movie,
right?
You pirate the movie.
So,
yeah, for sure.
So I pirate your movie. You get nothing. You didn't lose anything. I know you want to think that you lost. You didn't lose profit. You didn't. That didn't exist. This was an idea you had. You hoped you'd get this money in the future.
So you only saw it because it was free to you.
Well, regardless of why I saw it, right? Like maybe I was passing by a screening that someone was doing like in their backyard, and I just like stood there on the other side of their fence watching it. But the point I'm trying to make is that in me consuming the film, the producer doesn't expend any effort. He expended effort in producing the film, no doubt about it. Actors and lights and cameras, and we had to get catering because the actors want to eat. They're not going to work while hungry. Yes, to produce it, yes, but not to deliver it to me. No, for me to watch it, it just has to exist, right? Like a DVD has to exist. There's a file on my computer. There's a VHS or whatever. And so you don't lose anything, but the crux of this is that what do I get out of it?
You got to enjoy the movie.
I got to enjoy the movie. So in this situation, imagine how utopic this is. Like we have now increased the profit that exists in the world, and it didn't cost anyone anything.
Negative.
It did cost someone.
No,
something.
there was a cost. There was a cost to production of that
the
film.
production. If
Yeah,
they did,
Even if they, I'm not gonna say they didn't make back their money. Assume they did make back their money.
No, we don't have to assume that. Why? Why should we assume that? We don't have to assume that.
Because there's a cost to produce it.
I agree.
If the movie costs $30 million to make,
Yeah.
and it does not make $30 million,
Yeah.
or it has to make more than $30 million,
Yeah.
there's no reason for us to produce movies.
another movie.
Okay.
So then, boom.
So
that's
what do
it.
you mean? Okay, so there's no reason for you to
No,
produce.
there's no reason for
anyone, for anybody.
How
for
much?
any-
How much are you guys getting paid to do this podcast tonight?
I'm getting paid zero. I'm spending money.
Spend money.
I'm losing money.
Why would you do that?
Because I enjoy losing money.
Wait, no, it's not because you enjoy losing money. It's because you enjoy doing a podcast.
Correct. But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that's why there are levels to the game. That's why I'm saying
this is ideas that we've created. They're not real.
Okay, so in the terms of what this specific argument, the reason why someone would want to produce something without getting financial benefit immediately after would be to see some type of financial benefit in the long run.
I mean, but you never did anything to make someone happy?
Correct. Well, in this particular, all the time, always. But in this specific,
but not this guy, not this time.
Well, no. In this specific case, for the podcast, it would be more so like to help educate the world in better financial tools, such as Bitcoin.
Because you consider that valuable. That's going to make the world better, right?
The argument is cost of scale. It's what it costs to make a big.
I understand your argument.
That's what I'm saying.
But maybe we don't need big budget films. Like maybe in a free world,
but
we have very few.
But we do that. We have small budget films.
We do have small budget films, yeah.
There's a film festival every year, and multiple all around the world.
All over the world. Lots of film festivals.
Watch those films.
They still exist.
They still exist,
and they still have
They still have a market.
Yeah. I don't really know what your argument is. So you're telling me that
I'm saying
they're not going to make Hollywood movies if we're not willing to protect their profits. And I'm saying that's okay.
I'm saying they're not going to spend $250 million to make that.
They probably shouldn't.
And then you wouldn't get the same level of movies. What I'm saying.
I'm okay with that.
So I'm not okay. I rather them spend the money so I can watch Avatar, because there's no small film director that can get me Avatar.
Yeah.
So I guess like in the terms of like what's being discussed right now, it'd be that for something to be created, some type of energy or some
time and energy
backing, something needs to back
resources.
Something has to back exactly that product or service that's being created.
Yeah.
And no one will create a product or service without seeing some type of benefit as a whole.
Sure, but the benefit doesn't have to be financial.
It's just financially. It doesn't have to be financial. It's just financially. It's the easiest way to see it.
I mean, if you're trying to run a business, you need to make money, right? But I'm not talking about running businesses. I'm talking about like human behavior, separated from all of these like titles we give them. Like if you want to produce a film because you have like this vision in you, and it's just this is your passion, and you got this story to tell.
What do you consider businesses?
$200 million. What?
What do you consider businesses?
Wait, man, he was on a good point there.
Sorry.
Yeah, and if you need $200 million to tell this movie, and it's just you can't get the money because no one thinks that they're going to make their money back, then that sucks. Life isn't fair. But if you're able to get that money and you're able to produce this movie, even though people don't expect to make any money off of it, how? I have no idea. But, they've got like religions that get people donate money to. They've got all kinds of like charity organizations. So people throw money around left and right 100%. For reasons other than profit. Yeah. It happens. And maybe the reason could be for beauty, for sharing, for... So the point I was trying to make earlier...
Those are all forms of profit. I would consider those to be forms of profit.
Yes, exactly. So the point I'm trying to make is that if we recognize that there is profit to be gained in sharing information, and that you can actually bring more profit to the world by sharing information freely rather than sharing it with restrictions for profit motives, you would actually like significantly increase the profit in the world. Like people will become richer without having a penny more to their name. Like people will have joy and pleasure and beauty in their life that they didn't have before, and they're going to have it without costing anyone anything specifically. We can come up with specific examples of how they had to spend money to make this movie. Okay, so not that movie. Let's take that movie out of the question, and let's find a movie that someone made and they didn't charge anyone for. Maybe those don't exist yet, but
they do.
I know they do.
I'm just saying. I'm like, they do.
I think the important thing would be to compare which one brought more happiness, which one brought...
But that's what I'm saying.
You can't compare. That's subjective.
It is subjective,
but it's quantifiable.
But the problem is that by restricting, because what you're doing is you're restricting access. Like only the people who either paid for it or pirated it can get it. But if you create this circumstance where everyone can enjoy it, whether they paid for it or whether, and there's no pirating in this universe anymore because data is just data, and there's no such thing as stealing data. Unless you break into someone's house and go through their files, that's a different story. But like if it's just a copy of data that someone gave you, there's just so much profit. And this is just the joy of media, of like art, but now apply that same idea to other things like science, engineering. Now I'm talking about people being able to profit from ideas, being able to have ideas and apply them in their life regardless of the restrictions on the ideas. So patents, let me give you one crazy example. During the pandemic, India is one of the largest pharmaceutical manufacturers on the planet. They produce most of the as far as I know.
Them in China.
Yeah, tremendous amount. During the pandemic, all of the Western, rich nations pre-ordered the crap out of all the vaccines.
Yeah.
This is not a discussion about whether vaccines are good or not, right?
Yeah,
this is just the circumstances.
What they buy, they spend money.
So all these countries like the United States and France and Germany and England, they all bought way more of these vaccines than they needed. And what ended up happening when they finally started pumping them out, now all these poor countries can't get their hands on them because it's back ordered. Yeah. So India actually came out, and various people from India had said, hey, we have all these facilities where we do all this advanced pharmaceutical stuff. Why don't you, for a brief period of time, let us manufacture this vaccine so that we can get it to our people? And then, of course, they're like, no. Are you kidding me? Hell no.
Yeah, but that's big pharma, though. We're all against big pharma.
Yes, but just another example, though. Right? If they...
So
again,
at the end of the day, they weren't allowed to make the extra.
No, they had to buy them just like everybody else. Yeah. But if the vaccines worked, I'm not saying whether they did or not, or they do or not, but if they worked, then India could have tremendously helped their population of 1 billion people by being able to manufacture a drug in an emergency situation. Yeah. But because we do the things the way we do them, and we're so, squeezing every little penny we can.
No, I think you're right on some. Others I don't agree with, but
I know it's a radical take.
It's a radical. No, for sure. When it comes to pharma, I'm not going to disagree with you at all. I think that's just big pharma. We're one of the only 2 countries that are allowed to advertise any pharmaceutical company that are allowed to push anything.
I mean, look at what's your doctors are Ozempic, it's approved for diabetes, but everyone's taking it for weight loss.
And Ozempic's been out. It's not something new. This has been out.
Yeah, but now it's
it's popular.
The word is out.
Exactly.
The word is out.
Now it's popular for people to use to lose weight and all that.
It's nuts. We're such an over-medicated society.
Yes. I've been told that.
When advertisements in the mix and marketing.
No, it's not even marketing. I mean, the amount of pills we are allowed to buy at a drugstore in other countries, they don't give you that amount. Well, we're not allowed to buy that quantity.
Oh, the quantity, but they'll let you buy almost anything. In some countries.
Not saying they won't buy. I'm saying the amount they buy.
It's much less.
It's way less. They don't have 50 Advils in a pack, or for an example,
it's 10.
It's 10. It's not meant to be overtaken. We are over prescribing ourselves the amount we're allowed to buy. In quantity,
we just want to feel good all the time, right?
100%. Yeah.
Oh man, it's a big problem. We need to go for more walks.
Go for more walks. Get more sunlight. Get some exercise.
Yeah.
Drink more water.
That was the thing. We need more vitamin D. That's a real problem that affects your mood. That's proven. It's called cabin fever.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and we're always stuck in our offices, on our computers, or I guess the younger generation don't really have computers. They just have these cell phones,
tablets.
I asked people, do you have computers? And they're like, what? What's that?
Yeah, no, people don't use it. They only type.
It's so fascinating to see how technology has changed.
Over the past.
And computers is very short. The time they've been out to now.
Yeah, I mean, it's
especially
crazy.
The at home.
I remember getting my
Desktops?
first computer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nuts.
I think I still have my first computer at home.
I have some of my older.
That might be worth something.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
As an antique.
If you could put it in a museum, maybe. I had, and it's weird how the technologies they change and they're not backwards compatible. So I remember I had this computer and I used to be able to connect to the internet, but then something happened. Comcast changed something, and I could no longer connect this computer to the internet. And the computer it didn't have a DVR, so I couldn't burn discs. It had a floppy disk drive. And I had no way to get any of my data off this computer because I couldn't get on the internet.
And you couldn't get a floppy disk.
And I didn't have any none of my other computers. So even if I could get a floppy, I guess I would have to buy.
You had to get a floppy disk reader and then burn it.
There's very limited data on that computer anyway, so I don't think you're missing out.
I've long since let it go. It's it's to the wind.
4 megabyte floppy disks.
Oh man,
It would have been a minute
Bringing
to
it back to
download
me.
it all.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I think I don't have anything else to go.
Well, how long have we been?
I don't
here
know how long
today?
we've been.
We've been recording for approximately 85 minutes.
85 minutes. That's more than the hour you guys told me. I got to
Yeah.
start charging.
Well, you're not doing this for free? What are you talking about? You just became a radical rabbit hole. And we just got, wait a minute. This man just got me back on. We just went down a rabbit hole.
No, I do a lot of things for. It's not for free. It's like it's for joy. It's for pleasure.
Absolutely.
You know, like I host this meetup every Sunday, 110 times. Like I get joy out of it. I meet people. I have
understand that.
interesting conversations. So
It's actually a very fun meetup. I went like 2 or 3 times when you first started doing
out
it.
of
I was
110,
about to
you've
say
been twice.
I'm not going to talk because
This is your flex?
No, all I'm saying is
that's
that
a bad,
it was,
like, at least I say quiet. I've never been.
No, he's saying it's good. He's
yeah,
saying
it's a good time. I remember going, meeting some, like exactly what you said, meeting good people, having fun conversations, and the food there is actually really, really good.
Yeah, it's good food.
Yeah.
I think, the world would be a better place if more people did things out of joy and love and happiness than out of profit. I mean, nothing wrong with profit unless there's something wrong with how you got it.
So I think you can do what you're saying. You just can't do it at the big scale. And
That might be true.
And
So-
people are uncomfortable not doing it at that bigger scale.
Actually, you just said something that reminded me of the question that I said when I
yes,
interrupted
he wants
you.
to go back in. Okay.
What do you consider a business to be? Because the way I see businesses in general, not all of them, because there are people who do things just strictly for profit.
Yeah.
But at least what I consider to be a good entrepreneur, a good business, would be someone who has a mission, a vision to better the world, and that they have this product or service that they want to provide to the masses or to the people who it fits, the product market fit.
Yeah.
And that the only way to do that and to do more of it is to get a profit. So they would provide some type of service or product at the best price possible without overcharging their client, so that they could do more of what they're doing and provide more of what they see to be better for the world. And it technically should be, like theoretically should be better, because people are buying it and not going back for it or using the service.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. It's interesting. You said the word product market fit, and I had heard that on a podcast today, and they were saying like it could take like 4 or 5 iterations before you find the right product market fit. Yeah. And then just the first thought I had was like wait, you didn't already have like the market? Like, why are you making this product? Like, if you didn't, like, you're not solving a problem for someone? No, you need to find the person who you're solving the problem for. Like, why do you need to change the world? Why do you need to make the world better? Like, can you make your neighborhood better? Can you make your own life better? Changing the world is like a really, really high bar to set. And to me, it's like extremely delusional for most people to aim for that. We live such privileged lives that the notion that you can even reach that, I'm not saying you shouldn't reach that level. Hey, be a billionaire if you want to be a billionaire, but it's not going to make you happy. You can be happy a lot of ways, and it's like being a billionaire is not going to make you happy. Like doing things that you enjoy, being around people you enjoy, that's going to make you happy, whether you're a billionaire or not. Mm-hmm. So don't ever put the money in the way of the joy and the happiness, right? So
That's a statement that
if you can balance all that, that's great. But most people I know don't. They don't really have that great balance.
Yeah, because most people look for the money to make them happy.
Yeah, or they're so like, I mean, there's lots of problems. Like people get so caught up in maybe an idea that they're unwilling to realize that maybe the time isn't right, or maybe they don't have a product market fit, or not everyone can be an entrepreneur. Obviously, not everyone's creative enough, cutthroat enough, quick thinking enough. Yeah, so not everyone can start a business
to play the game.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways of doing business. Like I listened to a podcast called The No Agenda Show. And they run on the value for value model. So they, like us, right? Like they're just doing it for joy, but they'll like sit there and be like, hey, if you liked this podcast, if you enjoyed this podcast, how long? 80 minutes? That's as long as a movie. Did you enjoy this podcast as much as a movie? If you did, why don't you send us as much as you would spend on a movie? Why not, right? Keep the podcast going. Keep us happy. And so that's a business though.
That is.
And they will read, I mean, these guys bank. like they're making thousands and thousands of dollars every episode. They do twice a week.
I just want to like.
I don't want to like. I want Bitcoin. Likes are pointless, man. Send me Bitcoin, or you can send me a heartfelt note.
You're asking for something.
Did I what? Send us Bitcoin. This is the Sometimes Crypto, right? Sometimes Crypto podcast. You need to send Satoshis. Show the love. Are you guys on Podcasting 2.0 yet? You need to get on Podcasting 2.0, and then we're going to get some Satoshis to these guys.
This guy Prem.
Branded right there.
Yep. Well, do you have anything else you want to plug?
Plug your crypto brunch, man. Bitcoin brunch. My fault. My fault. He's gonna stab me after we get off of here.
Bitcoin Brunch every Sunday from 10 to 3 at Naomi's Garden. We talk about Bitcoin and the future of money and whatever else people want to talk about.
Nice.
Links will be in the description for all of his shenanigans.
Thanks for inviting me, guys. I'm really happy to be here.
It was a good time.
Yeah, it was fun.
Absolutely. You want to wrap it up?
What?
You want to give us ask for the quick comment?
Comment,
subscribe
for sure. Share.
Tell your friends. Tell your family.
Tell your family. Tell your coworkers.
Play it in the background while you're working.
Yeah.
If you have mistresses.
Yeah.
You said
or
mistresses,
or misters. Whatever
floats your boat.
We don't care.
We do a lot of boat floating here in South Florida.
We float a lot of boats.
A lot of boats being
floated. Or they sink.
But not as many.
Not this one. This boat's going to float.
This boat floats.
Now we'll just plug up the holes if it does start to sink.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for...
You just told me to wrap it up, and now you're getting involved.
I was going to say thank you for tuning in.
It's been another week of Sometimes Crypto.
The Unscripted Crypto Podcast.
Hey, yo.